Hi everyone, welcome back to Once Young.
Imagine this. You are you're walking down a vibrant, bustling street in Hannam-dong, Seoul.
Oh, Hannam-dong.
Right. And if you know Seoul, you know Hannam-dong is one of the wealthiest, most exclusive neighborhoods in the entire city.
Absolutely. Prime real estate.
Exactly. So you step inside this highly famous, critically acclaimed gomtang restaurant. The air is just thick with the rich, savory smell of boiling beef bone soup.
Making me hungry just thinking about it.
I know, right? And the place is packed. You got clinking bowls, loud chatter, waiters rushing by with steaming trays of food. You're expecting a fantastic hot meal. But according to official corporate registry documents, what you've actually just walked into is the registered branch office of a major celebrity management agency.
It really is a phenomenal image to start with. I mean, you look around for a reception desk, maybe a photocopier, a few talent agents negotiating scripts on their phones, and all you see are people slurping noodles and brisket.
Yeah,
It completely defies expectation.
it totally does. And that striking contrast, that's the launch pad for today's mission. As journalists ourselves, we are always fascinated by how these complex financial stories are uncovered. So in this deep dive, we are dissecting the fascinating intersection of celebrity wealth, commercial real estate, and, well, incredibly intricate corporate tax structures.
The holy trinity of financial reporting.
You said it. We are basing our discussion today on recent investigative reports from our peers, specifically a YTN broadcast that covered NBC's investigative program called Straight. They recently aired an expose looking into the well-known actress Lee Hanee and the somewhat suspicious business practices of a private corporation.
And before we get into the weeds of the financial mechanics here, we should probably make our stance clear to you, the listener.
Yes, definitely.
We are looking at this entirely impartially. We aren't taking any political sides or making personal judgments about the individuals involved. Our goal with this deep dive is simply to report on the findings, the claims, and the data presented in the source material, and hopefully help you understand the underlying systems at play.
Right. We are here to decode the playbook. Okay, let's unpack this by going right back to that beef bone soup restaurant in Hannam-dong.
Let's do it.
When the production crew from the investigative program actually visited this gomtang restaurant, they did exactly what you would do.
Yeah.
They walked in and they looked around. The restaurant was highly successful, doing incredibly well, completely full of diners, but the journalists noted there was absolutely no separate space anywhere inside for management work.
Nothing at all.
Nothing. No desks, no computers, no agency staff. Just a busy restaurant.
Which naturally prompted the production crew to press the owner of the restaurant for an explanation.
You have to ask, right?
Exactly. And the interaction they had is quite telling. The owner didn't deny the arrangement outright. In fact, he confirmed to the crew that, yes, this location was indeed registered as an agency.
Wow.
Yeah. But when they started asking for detailed answers like, how does this actually work? Where's the office space? Who works here? He completely dodged the questions.
He didn't want to get into the logistics.
It was not at all. However, he did drop one crucial detail before ending the conversation.
What was that?
He openly admitted that he is close friends with Lee Hanee's husband.
Okay, so a famous celebrity's agency is operating out of a soup kitchen owned by a friend.
Right.
The immediate question is, who actually owns the paperwork for this setup? Because someone has to be filing the official documents with the government.
Right, and the entity in question is a private corporation named Hope Project.
Hope Project.
Oh. Yes. This company was established back in 2015. And when you look at the corporate structure, it's a very tight, family-run ship. Lee Hanee's husband, Mr. Jang, serves as the CEO of the corporation, and Lee Hanee herself serves as an internal director.
So I want you to think about this for a second if you're listening. You have a highly successful, wealthy celebrity and her husband. They have the means to rent or buy premium office space anywhere in Seoul.
Anywhere.
High-rises in Gangnam, sleek studios in Mapo. Why on earth would they bother setting up a corporate entity and registering its physical branch office inside a loud, busy soup restaurant?
It's a great question.
Right. To answer that, we have to follow the money, which brings us to the real estate math.
And the math here is substantial. Let's look at the timeline. In November of 2017, this private corporation, Hope Project, purchased the very building that houses the Gomtang restaurant.
Okay.
The purchase price, roughly 6.45 billion won.
Wow. That is a massive chunk of change.
It is. But they didn't just write a check for 6.45 billion won in cash. That's not how these deals usually work. This is where the mechanics of corporate leverage come into play. What's fascinating here is how the debt was structured.
Okay, I'm listening.
If you look at the corporate registry for the building, there is a maximum bond amount set at 4.2 billion won.
Wait, break that down for me. For those of us who aren't commercial real estate developers, what does maximum bond amount actually mean on the bank paperwork?
It's essentially the ceiling of the collateral, right? The bank registers when they issue a mortgage. Banks usually set this number a bit higher than the actual loan itself, often around 120% of the principal.
Just to cover their bases.
Exactly. It covers potential unpaid interest or fees if the borrower defaults. So based on that 4.2 billion won bond maximum, financial analysts estimate the actual loan size taken out to buy the building was around 3.5 billion won.
So if we do the math on that, a 6.45 billion won purchase, financed with a roughly 3.5 billion won loan.
Yes,
They borrowed more than half of the entire purchase price of the building.
correct.
But hold on. Borrowing 3.5 billion won means they are paying a mountain of interest to the bank every single month. I mean, how does taking on that massive amount of debt actually help them?
That is the multi-million-dollar question, and it all comes down to what happens to the value of the asset over time. Let's fast forward from that 2017 purchase to today. The estimated value of that building has skyrocketed.
Really, how much are we talking?
Based on recent transactions and surrounding land prices in the Hannam-dong area, that building is now evaluated at anywhere from 10 billion to 15 billion won.
You're kidding.
Not at all. Most sources confidently cite it as being worth well over 12 billion won today.
So they bought an asset for 6.45 billion, used the bank's money to pay for more than half of it, and watched the asset's value essentially double over the course of a few years.
That is the reality of prime Seoul real estate.
Which leads directly to the core allegation raised by observers in the source material. People are looking at this setup and asking, was this management agency ever intended to manage a celebrity's career out of a soup kitchen? Or was this private corporation simply a highly efficient legal vehicle for what they call real estate shopping?
That is the crux of the investigation. And to really grasp why someone would go through the trouble of creating a private corporation just to buy a building, we need to synthesize the why.
The underlying mechanics.
Exactly. We have to look at the mechanics of corporate tax advantages versus individual tax burdens. It comes down to a few key areas: loan-to-value ratios, expense processing, and capital gains.
Let's take those one at a time. Loan-to-value ratio, or LTV. I know this dictates how much a bank is legally allowed to lend you based on the value of the property, but how does the corporate structure change the game here?
It changes everything. If you or I, as private individuals, walked into a bank in South Korea to get a mortgage for a commercial building, we would face strict LTV limits.
Right, they aren't just handing out billions to anyone.
Exactly. Generally, an individual borrower is capped at an LTV of about 60 to 70%. The bank looks at you as a single person with a single income stream, which is a specific risk profile.
Makes sense.
But corporations play by a different set of rules. A private corporation can often secure a much higher LTV, up to 80%.
Because the government and the banks want to encourage business investment.
That's the theory. They assume a corporation is going to generate revenue, hire people, stimulate the economy. So securing massive multi-billion won loans becomes significantly easier if you have a corporate shield.
Okay, so the corporation lets you borrow more of the bank's money up front. But we go back to my earlier question. What about that mountain of interest on a 3.5 billion won loan? Isn't that a huge financial drain month to month?
Not if you are a corporation. In fact, that debt becomes a powerful tax shield.
How so?
If you hold the building individually, paying that interest hurts your personal bottom line. You just lose that money. But if the corporation holds the building, that heavy interest on the 3.5 billion won loan can be written off as a corporate business expense.
Can you give me an analogy for how that expense processing actually feels in practice? I think sometimes the tax jargon gets a bit dense.
Sure. Think of expense processing like a massive discount coupon provided by the government. If a regular person pays a repairman to fix a leaky roof on their house, that money is just gone from their bank account.
Right.
But if the Soup Restaurant Corporation pays a repairman to fix the roof of their building, the government essentially gives them a discount on their year-end taxes.
Wow.
And it's not just the loan interest either. The general maintenance of the building, the repairs, the upkeep, all of it gets processed as corporate expenses, which drastically lowers the corporation's taxable income.
So the debt itself and the cost of owning the building is doing the heavy lifting to lower their tax bill.
Precisely.
And then we hit the final payoff, Capital Games. They bought it for $6.45 billion. It's worth maybe $15 billion now. If they sell, there is a massive market price difference.
Correct. And capital gains tax on that massive profit features much lower rates for corporations compared to private individuals.
So they win on the loan size, they win on the monthly expenses, and they win when they finally sell it.
Yes. The ultimate takeaway here is that for the ultra-wealthy, real estate isn't just about owning a building, it's about buying a highly leveraged tax shield.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because Lee Hanee is not an isolated case. The investigative report brought up a highly publicized precedent to show that this is a known strategy.
Oh yes, the Cha Eun-woo case.
Exactly. They looked at the family of Cha Eun-woo, another massive celebrity. Cha Eun-woo's mother also set up a private corporation. And guess where she registered its official corporate address?
I'm gonna guess it wasn't a sleek high-rise in Gangnam either.
Nope. An eel restaurant.
An eel restaurant.
Specifically an eel restaurant out in Gangwon-gun, Incheon. It's the exact same playbook. You take a dining establishment, call it a corporate headquarters, and funnel money through it. I mean, I'm just imagining a government auditor walking in, asking to see the Q3 financial reports, and being handed a plate of freshly grilled eel.
It sounds absurd, but the National Tax Service, the NTS, takes a very specific, critical view of this tactic. They don't view it as a funny quirk of real estate. They view it as a deliberate tactic to disperse income.
How does the income dispersal actually work in practice? Like, mechanically?
It's about shifting the burden. By funneling high celebrity earnings and real estate assets through Corporation A, located at the eel restaurant or the gomtang restaurant, the wealthy avoid the punishingly high individual income tax rate.
Now, how high does that get?
In South Korea, the highest bracket for individual income tax can reach an astonishing 45%.
Wait, 45%. So nearly half of their income would go to taxes if they filed individually.
Exactly.
No wonder they went through the trouble of setting up a fake office.
Precisely. But if you shift that income into a corporation, you suddenly fall under the corporate tax rate. And the corporate tax rate sits comfortably in the 20% range.
That is a massive difference.
You are effectively cutting your tax burden in half simply by filing paperwork that says your desk is located next to the eel tanks or the soup vats.
That is wild.
And think about what this means for you listening to this. We all understand basic taxation. You work, you earn, you pay your percentage. The tax codes we're discussing were originally designed by governments to stimulate actual business growth, to help companies hire people and build infrastructure.
Right, to build a healthy economy.
But what we are seeing is how those very same laws can be perfectly legally utilized as highly specialized wealth-building tools for top earners.
It's like a parallel financial universe.
Yeah.
But of course, we have to look at the other side of the coin here. The source material also outlined the defense presented by Lee Hanee's agency regarding the Hannam-dong property. They didn't just stay silent when the investigative journalists came knocking.
Right, they offered a rebuttal to these suspicions.
They did.
What was their official explanation for the Phantom Office? How did they justify the gomtang setup?
The agency claimed that the corporation genuinely, legitimately planned to use the building for a real corporate head office. They even stated they planned to build a cultural arts space there.
A cultural arts space inside a beef bone soup restaurant.
Well, their excuse for why it was still functioning as a restaurant when the journalists arrived was a tenant dispute. They stated they had contract issues with the existing tenant who, remember, is the restaurant owner and a friend of the CEO, and because of those leasing disputes, they simply couldn't use the space right away for their intended corporate purposes.
This raises an important question, especially when we cross-reference that defense with the actual data from the real estate registry. Let's look at the timeline again.
Okay, let's look at it.
The building was purchased in late 2017. The official transfer of ownership, according to the registry, was completely finalized in 2020.
Let's get this straight. You buy a building in 2017 to be your global headquarters and cultural arts space. Ownership officially transfers to you in 2020. It's now years later, and you still haven't moved in because you're arguing with the guy selling soup on the ground floor.
It's a bit of a stretch.
If I bought a multi-million-dollar building, I wouldn't wait 4 years to use my own desk.
It is a timeline contradiction that observers find very difficult to swallow. A tenant dispute that prevents a multi-billion-won corporation from using its own headquarters for years, while the tenant's restaurant thrives and continues to do incredible business, certainly strains credulity.
Especially when you factor in the restaurant owner's own admission that he's close friends with the CEO. It doesn't sound like a bitter legal battle over a lease.
It really doesn't.
But the timeline contradiction isn't the only shadow hanging over this situation. There is a critical piece of recent history that the broadcast highlighted, which really adds weight to the public's skepticism regarding this specific agency.
The 2024 audit.
Yes. Just recently, during a 2024 tax audit, Lee Hanee was hit with a massive tax surcharge.
A surcharge of 6 billion won.
6 billion won.
That is an enormous penalty. For context, tax authorities don't levy a 6 billion won surcharge for a simple clerical error. That implies a massive discrepancy in how income and assets were being reported versus how the NTS believed they should be categorized.
It's a staggering number. Now, to present her defense from that time, impartially, as it was reported by the investigative programs, her side firmly denied any intentional tax evasion. She paid the 6 billion won in full.
Right.
Her representatives claimed that this massive penalty was simply a, quote, difference in viewpoint between the tax authorities and her personal agents regarding how certain incomes and expenses should be classified.
I see.
They framed it as an administrative disagreement, a different interpretation of the tax code, rather than a deliberate crime.
A difference in viewpoint to the tune of 6 billion won. It's an incredibly expensive disagreement.
So what does this all mean? When you take a 6 billion won penalty from a previous audit and place it next to a current story about a phantom office in a soup restaurant, how does that shape the narrative for the public?
It creates a pattern in the public eye. When we synthesize all the main points from this deep dive, the picture is quite stark. You have a building purchased for 6.45 billion won, now potentially worth up to 15 billion. The purchase was executed through a private, family-run corporation, allowing them to leverage an 80% LTV ratio from the bank.
Which an individual couldn't do.
Exactly. By doing so, they can deduct immense loan interest and building maintenance as corporate expenses, drastically lowering their taxable income. They also position themselves for a much lower capital gains tax rate when they eventually sell.
Yeah.
And the entire operation is officially headquartered out of a bustling beef bone soup restaurant, justified by a years-long, seemingly incredibly polite tenant dispute.
It really is a masterclass in exploiting legal loopholes, wrapped up in a high-profile celebrity story.
It shows a profound understanding of the boundaries of corporate law and tax codes. They are navigating a system that allows this type of structure to exist legally, even if it feels completely misaligned with the spirit of the law, which was to encourage real businesses to grow and hire.
It makes you look at every restaurant, every cafe, every small shop a little differently, doesn't it? You have to wonder how many other bustling dining rooms are secretly the corporate headquarters for a multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio.
It's a fascinating and somewhat sobering reality of how wealth is managed, leveraged, and protected at the highest levels.
Well, we want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the incredibly complex, often hidden world of celebrity real estate and corporate tax structures. We've traced the money from a bowl of gomtang all the way to the national tax codes, and hopefully shed some light on how these financial mechanisms actually work in practice.
But as always, we want to leave you with something to consider as you go about your day.
If the legal structure of a business allows a soup kitchen to serve as a high-end corporate headquarters on paper, at what point does the definition of a business need to be rewritten in the tax code? And who ultimately pays the price when the system operates on two different sets of rules?
All right, that's it for today. Thanks for watching Once Young.